Welcome to Everyone Loves Guitar, where we sit down and talk with interesting professional guitar players, uncover their stories, and discover what makes them tick. If you love guitar, music, and the backstory of people's lives, stick around. You're in the right place. Hey everybody, this is Craig Garber. I've got just like a freaking wonderful guest today who's just a tremendous player and just a really, really cool person. We're with the one and only Mimi Fox. And honestly, before I go into her background, she's just incredibly talented and her guitar playing is very moving. So I would encourage you to check out Mimi's playing immediately and enjoy what the hijinks that are going to happen over the next however long. Anyway, let me tell you about Mimi. She is an internationally renowned guitarist, composer, recording artist. She's been named a winner in 6 consecutive Downbeat Magazine international critics polls and has been recognized by writers and colleagues alike as one of the most eloquent guitarists on today's scene. That is a great word for you, actually. Eloquent. That's it. Your hands. That's the word. Eloquent. That's what it is. In one of many feature stories, Guitar Player magazine hailed Mimi as a prodigious talent who has not only mastered the traditional forms, but has managed to reinvigorate them. In a further nod to her guitar artistry and in conjunction with Heritage Guitar's 30th anniversary, the historic Kalamazoo Guitar Company has rolled out the Mimi Fox Artist Signature Model. She's performed and recorded with some of the music world's most commanding players, including fellow guitarist Charlie Bird, Stanley Jordan, and Charlie Hunter, who I had on this show, who is a very cool dude. Grammy-nominated saxophonist Branford Marsalis, David Sanchez, Houston Person, and the late Don Lanfair. Vocalists Abby Lincoln, Diana Krall, Kevin Mahogany, and Janice Siegel from Manhattan Transfer. B3 organ masters Joey DiFrancesco, Barbara, I'm going to mess this up, Dennerline?
Yeah, Dennerline, you got it.
Dennerline and Dr. Lonnie Smith, and powerhouse drummer Terry Lynn Carrington. She's also performed with legends Stevie Wonder and John Sebastian, and with Patty Larkin's Vanguard Records produced La Guitarra project. Her YouTube videos have received hundreds of thousands of views, and again, if you haven't checked her out, please do. Mimi's released 10 recordings as a band leader. Her all-new acoustic recording called This Bird Still Flies will be released today, the day this show is airing, February 15th, 2019. So please check that out. It's called This Bird Still Flies. We'll talk about that later. Her previous release, Standards, Old and New, receive universal praise. Consummate mastery. Each piece is a gem, Grammy-nominated writer Jim Ferguson said. Mimi has mastered the art, and that was the Jazz Guitar Society of Western Australia. And beyond her passion and virtuosity, Fox plays with a profundity, I've never said that word, a profundity that only comes from a lifetime of devotion to one's art. That was Guitar Player magazine. That's like an SAT word.
That's a good. That was one of their best writers, Barry Cleveland.
Yeah,
that was sweet. Yeah.
Mimi's released 3 recordings on Steve Vai's Favored Nations label, including the 2010 DVD Live at the Palladium. This recording features Mimi in front of a sold-out audience and has all the magic and excitement of a live performance. Pop Culture Classics said Fox demonstrates her vibrant virtuosity in this concert and turns each selection into a distinctive gem. Just Jazz Guitar said this is simply jazz guitar playing at its best. Her ideas are creative, heartfelt, and sophisticated. Mimi maintains a whirlwind touring schedule. She's playing typically major festivals from New York to Tokyo, including tours of the Caribbean, Japan, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, and Europe. International festivals include the Montreal, Guinness Cork, Perth International, and Monterey Jazz Festivals. Stateside, she's headlined at elite venues such as the Blue Note, Merkin Concert Hall, and the Village Gate in New York City. The Regatta Bar and Scullers in Boston, the Kennedy Center and Blues Alley in Washington, D.C., the Triple Door and Jazz Alley in Seattle, and Yoshi's and the Great American Music Hall in San Francisco. Mimi, thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate your time.
Thanks. Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you for that really lovely introduction. Thank you.
So you were telling me before we started that you started playing at a very young age.
Yeah, I actually started playing. Well, I started playing my mom's soup pots with chopsticks and spoons and stuff, along to my dad's old jazz records when I was like 9. And so my mom got me a little snare drum, and so then I actually started playing drums in junior high school in the jazz bands. But when I was 10, my mom got me a little guitar that because I really fell in love with the Monkees. I was 10, and I just thought that they were all that, and so she got me a little guitar, and that was it. I mean, the minute I started playing, I just literally could not stop playing. Instead of going out and playing with my friends and going to the store or playing stickball or whatever we were doing. Suddenly now I just come home from school, have a bowl of Cheerios, and just start playing and playing and playing and playing. And, I'd fall asleep with my guitar, and that was it.
So Davy Jones started all this?
It was more Mike Nesmith.
Nesmith.
Even at 10 years old, I chose the hippest monkey.
The hippest, yeah. So did you have a musical family?
Well, my mom was a singer. My mom actually sang semi-professionally up until the time I was about 12 or 13. It was pretty hard with raising 3 kids, but she loved jazz and was a songwriter. But she was not trained. She was just self-taught. But she was extremely creative, and it really cool because everybody in my family loved music, and they all turned me on to different things. And my sister and brother loved the Beatles, and then my sister got into Aretha Franklin and Motown stuff, and so I heard that. But my mom and dad loved jazz and classical music, so there was just constantly music playing. And my mom was very interested in educating me. So, for instance, if my sister would bring home a Janis Joplin recording and Janis Joplin was singing Summertime, my mom would take me to the original recording, Porgy and Bess by Gershwin, and make me listen to the original. And she'd say, Janis Joplin's okay, honey, but let's listen to this. And so I'd say, wow, and so I started, I just was exposed to all of this music. And then, like I said, before we started, I had the Beatles' Rubber Soul album, and I would just keep playing it over and over and over again until I learned all the parts. And, to this day, there is not a part of that album that I don't know. I mean, it's just, it stays with me, it stayed with me all these years. Well, I'm a big fan of the Beatles. I've recorded a bunch of their tunes over the years, my own, jazz arrangements of their stuff, but their melodies were so great that, we have an expression in the business, you got a strong melody, take it to the bank. And they wrote such incredibly great melodies. And so, I was a big fan from the time I started playing. I still am.
What's unusual though is at a young age, that passion for jazz. And
I know. Right. Well, I liked all music. I mean, I really, I still do. What's really funny? I'm very proud to wear the moniker of jazz musician, Craig, because, obviously it's taken a gazillion years of practice and a lot of years of playing and woodshedding. So I'm very proud of that. And you don't just wake up one day and say, oh, I'm a jazz musician. You really got to pay some dues.
Definitely.
All that being said, I love all kinds of music. I mean, I'm always listening to a lot of different things, whether it's students that turn me on to new things or just in the course of my life. And, I studied classical guitar at one point. I love and revere that. And so, I played in a funk band when I was about 19, when I was saving up money to move to California. I played orchestral drums with a community orchestra. I played timpani and drums in a community orchestra. So there's really not any style of music that I don't dig. If you've got good practitioners and you got good musicians, I will listen. I'm down to listen to just about anything because I learned so much from listening to other genres. There's so many great players, and I like to be like a sponge. That's one thing my mother taught me. She said, be a sponge and soak up everything you can. And I like to practice that, sort of in every area of my life, but particularly as a composer and a musician, it's really important, because if you say, I don't like this, you're shutting yourself off. You're closing a door, and you limit yourself, and I never want to do that. I never want to limit myself, because I'll be honest with you, when I first signed with Favored Nations, I didn't know much about that kind of rock, some of the rock stuff. I knew who Steve Vai was because of Frank Zappa and other things, and I was dimly aware of it. But when I signed with the label, Steve sent me as kind of a care package so many of the different artists that he had signed that were all great guitarists in different genres. He had fingerstyle players and rock players and a few jazz players, just a wide variety, some metal. And I was like, holy shit, there's so much cool music. And suddenly, I had it at my fingertips, and it was just like, okay, this, and all of it, I find it very inspiring. The same way that, Paul Gilbert or Andy Timmons or Steve will say they're inspired by me and what I'm doing in the jazz thing. I'm totally turned on by the stuff that they're doing, because it's so, it's very musical. And there's a lot, some jazz artists can be kind of snooty about rock players. They really they take a very broad paintbrush and paint a thing and saying, it's not my cup of tea. It's too loud. It's too this or to whatever. But again, I just think so. Bring a pair of earplugs, and dig what you can, because there's so many great artists. Yeah. And so anyway, that's just sort of always been my philosophy. But I think because I grew up in a house where there was all different music playing all the time, I didn't see a need to categorize or pigeonhole or stereotype, musicians or types of music. I just said, bring it on. Here I am. I was a little kid, but you're right. I mean, I guess a lot of kids wouldn't have been into jazz that much, but there's something about the groove and the swing feel of jazz that I was drawn to right away, and my parents had a great record collection. So I heard all this cool music. So.
And it sounds like they were very supportive of your interest in desire to pursue music.
Yes, they were, for the most part. Yes, for the most part. I mean, when I first moved to California, I had a big argument with my dad because he didn't want me to go to San Francisco. He said, it's just a bunch of hippies there. Why don't you go to LA? You'll be able to do studio work. And so he was worried. He was worried about me. He wanted me to make a good living. I did go to LA. I did do studio work, and I hated it with a passion. I hate having headphones on all day and having some producer that, didn't know his ass from his elbow, basically telling me what to play. Oh, Mimi, play a Dwayne Eddy. Like, oh, play a Eddie Van Halen. Like, oh, play this. And I was like, well, where am I in all this? It's like, this is not, if I wanted, I just didn't want someone barking at me all day telling me what to play. And so I thought to myself, I know my dad's not going to like it, but maybe I make a good living. I went up to San Francisco, and I never, and I fell in love with the Bay Area, and that was that. So many good musicians. You mentioned Charlie Hunter. We talked about Alex earlier from the Bay Area, Well, and when I moved there was also a very thriving, I moved to San Francisco in 1980, and there was a really thriving jazz scene, the old Keystone Corner. There was, Bobby McFerrin was there, and Joe Henderson, and just so many, there's a vibes. Oh, Bobby Hutcherson, the great vibraphonist. There were just so many great musicians. And a lot of them took me under their wings and were willing to, really spend time with me. Those were the old days. Now, a lot of folks learn jazz in a university or a conservatory. To me, I'm part of, I think, one of the last generations that learned on the bandstand where, I'd be playing with some sax player. I'd get a gig with a band, and maybe I had been practicing Misty all week, but then this guy's going to suddenly just start playing it. And instead of it being in E flat, it's in G flat. And it's like, holy shit. And I'm up there on stage, and I got to fly by the seat of my pants and make it happen. That's dues paying. And that's the best ear training that you can get. I try, you can try to replicate that in the classroom, but honestly, man, it's hard. So I'm just, I'm very grateful to the San Francisco music scene, because everybody really, really nurtured me.
What made you move out there? Like, why didn't, you were in New York. Most people either move, not nowadays, but, back then even they'd go to New York, Nashville, or LA?
Well, what started happening for me is I was going back to New York a lot to do shows and to play, and then to go on to Europe from there. I'd usually pick up a rhythm section in New York, the guys that I knew and worked with. But I was going back so often, and I honestly, the lifestyle in New York, the hustle and the living in an apartment the size of your pinky, and just the hard knocks of it. I had grown up in New York, and I felt like I'd paid those dues, and so coming back in my own terms, as an artist and playing at some of the best places in the city, I felt like, okay, I know that it's a trade-off. I know that had I moved back to New York, perhaps there are some different doors that might have opened, but I was able to, from the West Coast, able to establish an international presence just by sheer force of touring so much and being out there and, having the good fortune of having some great artists take me on tour with them, and then getting good write-ups in magazines like Downbeat and stuff, and then having record companies that invested in me. I was very fortunate in that way. And I was also willing to tour my little tush off. And so that definitely made a big difference. So, of course, I tell students that I have out here in California now, if you want to become a jazz artist, you must spend time in New York, some serious time there. But for me, I just chose a different route. I do kind of march to my own drummer, as it were. And like I said, I grew up in New York. I feel the expression "enough is enough" definitely is how I feel. I still love it. I love to come back for about 3 or 4 days, do some shows, go out and go to the Village and hear the best music I'll ever hear for the next 5 years, and then come back home to California. It's it's something. For a while also, I was doing, there was a New York at NYU. They brought me back as a adjunct professor to teach for the NYU summer guitar intensive, jazz guitar intensive. So I was doing that. So then I was there for about 3 weeks.
That's got to be cool, no?
Yeah, for a number of years. And I did that, and that was a real honor to be asked to be part of that, because obviously there's tons of great jazz guitar players in New York, but they really wanted me to come out, so that was really a real honor. So I think because of doing all those things, and I still go back to New York a lot to do shows, I've managed to establish a presence there, meet a lot of great folks, and then still have my home in California. But it's a trade-off. I miss the intensity of the players. I miss the creativity of the music scene. The jazz scene, particularly in New York, is just off the charts. I mean, it's phenomenal. So I miss that. But the quality of life, and the weather, the other thing that happened being in California for so long. Well, you know this, Craig, if you're in camp. Yeah. You just reach a point where it's like, really, it's, 15 degrees, and with the wind chill factor, it's 8. And
I got to move my car across the street because it's alternate side of the street parking.
Temperatures in single digits.
Yeah. Oh,
I'm like, no, that's not working for me. That's like the number I should have when I'm online at the deli waiting for my baby. It is not a temperature.
Yeah. I hear you. Did they put you up in the Village when you did that thing in NYU?
They put me up in NYU housing.
Oh, was
actually in, I want to say Union Square area.
Oh, that's such a great area. My God, how cool is that?
It was very cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. Did you, you did a few things that were unusual in that you were a female playing guitar in jazz, not common. And then you decided to perform as a solo act. Did being a woman at all give you a harder time? I'm asking you that not like to drama, like gossip or anything. I'm genuinely curious, because it's not, being a musician is tough enough.
Yeah, it is. It's an added burden for women. There's no doubt about it. I think the jazz community, the music world, unfortunately, it's unregulated, a lot of it. And so I had a lot of really tough things happen when I was coming up. I would go to jam sessions. I was always the only woman, except if there were some other jazz vocalists there, usually. And so, it was a tough, it was really tough. And I had to develop a kind of thick skin. What I realized is that there were some guys that were just total jerks, but they would be jerks to other guys as well. And I started watching them and I realized that they had some kind of personal hang up. So I was an easy target as a woman player,
Gotcha.
but I also watched how they treated men, and they were just as much of a schmuck to the guys too. And so what started happening for me, it took me a while to get this, is I stopped personalizing comments, so that if someone would make some kind of really sexist comment like, oh, well, you play pretty good rhythm, but you shouldn't try to solo, girls can't do that, or, really ridiculous, stupid things that people would say. I would just stop. I would just not personalize it, and I would go home and I just practice harder. I think what was really hard when I was first coming up, Craig, to be honest with you, was sort of the attitude. There was a sort of, I'm not even going to say an old boys network, because these were a lot of young musicians that I was working with, but the atmosphere could sometimes get kind of grungy and kind of lewd. And, I had a lot of guys that were hitting on me, and it made it really hard as a young musician. I mean, imagine, say you're a young musician and you come to a jam session, it's hard enough to put yourself.
Yeah, right.
But then if you've got to deal with guys telling dirty jokes and all that other stuff, it was really hard.
Hitting on you and stuff. That's really uncomfortable.
It was very uncomfortable. And then the other thing that would happen, I remember sometimes doing studio sessions, and right as I'm trying to lay my guitar part, some tricky stuff, I'd have the producer sort of hitting on me, trying to give me a back rub. And it's like, oh, Mimi, what are you doing?
Oh my God.
These are no different than what women go through in any field. Like what I always say to people is like, look, until our society reaches a point where it's more evolved, and because, like I said, unfortunately, the music industry, so much of what we do is not regulated, and there's no human resource, there's no HR person I can go to say, this guy is telling dirty jokes and hitting on me, and it's really freaking me out. There was no one to talk to. I would talk. What I came to learn is I started buddying up when I would go to jam sessions, whether it was with another woman, I started meeting some women players, or the men that I became good friends with. And I discovered that as we were part of a thing, it was much more effective if some guy was just being a jerk to have another guy go up to him and say, you know what, that's just not cool, man. Like, just lose that. And so I had men that I felt were really supportive of me as well. And by the way, when we were talking about Steve Vai, he is a huge mensch, and I remember the first time I talked to him. So I would say, yes, I have my war stories, Craig. But I also had many men from different record labels, because before I was with Favored Nations, I did 2 projects with Monarch Records in San Francisco, which was run by these 2 brothers. They invested a lot of money in my career. Steve invested a lot, and I'm talking some serious dough, and not just for the recording and paying for everything and the CDs and all of that. They gave tour support. They hired great publicists. They went to town for me. So I would say that yes, I've had taken my share of hard knocks, but I've also had a lot of men that for whatever reasons in their life, maybe just because they're good human beings, I think they're sensitive to the fact of what it must have been like for me, and they leaned over backwards to be supportive. Like for instance, I remember when I finished, after I finished my first Mel Bay book, I remember I was talking to Steve, and we were talking about my next album and different things. And I said, Steve, I'm so excited. I finally put this puppy to bed. I finished this book. It was all a book about arpeggio studies. And he said to me, he was a great mentor, really. He said to me, Meme, that's great. Now you need 9 other books. And I was like, shit. Do you see how long it took me to finish this one? He said, yeah. He said, but he was basically encouraging me, that kind of thing where you're constantly putting
next. Yeah.
What is next? Okay, keep doing it. And it was something that it was sort of new to me, because I didn't have like sort of professional mentors in that way that were really, I had musical mentors that were helping me with my chops and honing my artistry, but I did not have professional mentors. And Steve was that way for me. He illuminated so much, and he knows the music business. He really gets it. And so, I learned a lot. So again, the short answer to your question is yes. I've been through I've experienced a lot of, just dumb things as a woman, but I've also had, it's the bottle's half full for me, Craig, because like I said, I've also had men. Now look, Steve loved my playing, and I don't think my being a woman had to do with it. And yet I think that he was particularly sensitive to the fact that, wouldn't it be good to give this Jewish girl a break? She deserves this. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that that might have played some factor. I don't know. You'd have to talk to Steve. Maybe he'd say, no, I just loved her playing. She happened to be a woman. That's great. We hit it off. She's from New York too. That's cool. But I do think that I've been also very fortunate. So I try to look at things when I look back, instead of just looking at all this, the jerks. I look at the good things that have happened.
Sure.
And I see that I've been very blessed. So, I always tell when younger women come up to me, I wish that things had changed more. I think that they're changing, but it's still slow. And they'll ask me how they should handle this, how they should handle this, how they should handle this. I always have a simple answer, which is basically, look, if someone's putting you down and they're just being a jerk, lose them, because you will find and seek out the people, men and women, that will support you, and let them be the people that you surround yourself with, because it's too hard and you don't want to have to be countering act. It's like you said, it's hard enough to be a musician and all the stuff that all musicians go through. But then with the added burden as a woman, you can't afford to have people that are going to put you down and bring you down. And so you need to find the people that will support you. And that's something that I've lived by. And I encourage other women and men and, to find the people that will support you and nurture you, because it's, we're all sensitive, and that's why we become musicians. But it can be tough out there. It can be really tough.
Well, I think also you don't realize I have kids that were your age when you went out to California by yourself. Yeah, right. So that's I'm thinking of, God, that's that I have a lot of empathy, because I could just see, my youngest is a girl, my other ones are boys, but I could just see, and that would be upsetting.
Of course.
So I really have a lot of respect for you, because you had to basically grow balls really quick to take care of yourself.
Well, it's so funny. Here I have a little joke for you. It's not balls, it's tubes. And that's a double entendre, because I love my Fender tube amp. My Fender tube. So it used to be guys would come up to me after a show, and I'd be sitting on my amp, maybe, putting it on standby before the next set. And they say, Mimi, I love how you play. Man, you got balls. You really got. I say, no, I don't have balls. I have tubes. And look at my amp. And that would always get a.
There you go.
But you know what, Craig, the women that came before me had it much harder.
Sure.
Yeah. So again, a lot of it is perspective. You have to, and the truth is, the deck is stacked against you, but you know what? The deck is stacked against a lot of folks.
It's stacked against everybody.
It is. And everybody has their crosses to bear, and you've got to find a way to hold your head up high and to just find a way to believe in yourself and believe in the power of your music. And that is what you have to do. But of course, for dads and, for Steve, he's a father, he's a brother. And, I think all of that stuff, it's also just about being a good human being. Yeah. This is just a simple question of fairness. And so I think things are changing. It's slow though. It's slow. It's going to take time.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you did what you did.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig.
Question. At a certain point in time, you decided to perform as a solo act.
Well, I do both. I still tour with groups.
You still tour?
And do that. Yeah, I do it all, but I've really, I've done a number, and, this will be my fourth solo project. I love the challenge of solo guitar. It's hard.
Yeah.
And I really love that challenge. So it's also something that's really, it's just been it's a great thing to tour as a solo artist because you don't have to worry about rhythm sections and this and that and having time to rehearse and do all that. It's more of a burden in some ways because you're very exposed and everything is on you.
Very vulnerable. Very
vulnerable. But it's also really challenging. And I seem to really like that challenge. So yeah, it's been a big part of my playing, but also, the two recordings I did with Favordations, I did a lot of my original compositions with quartet and quintet, and I love doing that too. I've played with orchestras. I love doing that. I love doing it all. It's all, sort of part of a different side of my musical personality.
You do a really good job. Like, I think you do a tremendous job of keeping your name out there in front of people. And I know myself from running businesses in general over the last 20 years, it's not an easy thing to do. It's simply because you just don't do it once and then it's over.
Yeah, right.
So my question is, how did you start getting yourself, quote, out there, and how do you keep yourself out there? And do you have some sort of a systematic approach to this?
Well, again, I learned a lot from Steve Vai. Steve taught me a lot about just sort of the importance of marketing, publicity, all of that, of just sort of doing it. I think now it's become more of an intrinsic, organic kind of process for me. And these days with social media, it becomes pretty easy to just sort of, hey, guys, I got this new video. Hey, here's a thing of me backstage at the Iridium eating cheesecake. I don't know why people are going to be like, that's great. She's eating cheesecake. Good. Whatever. People like all that kind of stuff. So I think some of it has just become second nature. Musicians, we have to stay current. We have to stay up with what's going on. You can't rest on your laurels. And so I think it's just been something that I always try to be myself. I just try to be, friendly and who I am. And a lot of times things will just come naturally. You don't have to, I'm not, a hard sell kind of gal. And that's why you have agents and managers to do that kind of thing, or publicists. But I just try to be friendly, and I genuinely care about people. And so I think that comes across. And I think, I just try to be myself, Greg, and then the rest sort of falls into place. But it is something that I'm mindful of, because these days, social media and networking and all of that stuff, it's such such an important part.
It's critical. It's critical. Your outreach is everything.
It is.
You've played like in some really cool venues. I was curious if you had a favorite or a couple of favorites.
I think I have two gigs that really stand out just because they were both prestigious and really wonderful experiences. I did two sets a few years ago at the Montreal Jazz Festival, and one was with a group and one was solo, Craig. And the audience at that festival was phenomenal. After my solo set, I got an encore, so I went back to play, and then they wouldn't let me go. They kept it was like I got 3 standing ovations. By the time I came out for the third time, they had broken me down. I just started crying.
Wow.
And it was so moving because I felt like they've really got it. They were just a beautiful crowd. And afterwards, I've got all these French guys with berets and little goatees coming up and kissing me on both cheeks. And, oh, Mimi, will you sign this CD? Oh, Mimi, très magnifique. They were talking to me in French and English, going back and forth. And I was like, okay. It was a magical experience for me. And so that was really special. And another time, of course, was the Kennedy Center, just because it was such there were a lot of luminaries there, and I had a great group. This was after my second album that I had done with Favored Nations. And so I had a great quartet from New York, great players with me. And, I remember right before I went on, my stomach was just like, I love it when students come up to me and they say, Mimi, you're so relaxed. And I'm like, dude, do you want to be inside my stomach before I step on stage at some of these gigs? You do not want to be inside my stomach. I know I look that way. That's what I've practiced all these years, is to just go out and try to do my thing. But man, butterflies, galore. But then I just got into the music. The drummer was hitting me with some great stuff, and I let the music carry me. But I did have a moment where I was like, man, I'm just a little Jewish girl from Queens. How the hell did I get here? I didn't go to college. I didn't have all the things that some other folks had. How the hell did I get here? And it was both humbling and just very magical. And afterwards, a lot of folks that were there, some really amazing artists, came up to me. So that was a really special experience. And then the write-up afterwards, allaboutjazz.com, the writer singled out my show. There were about 15 acts over several days, and he singled out my show as the highlight of the festival.
That's really cool.
Oh my God.
That's really cool.
I remember saying to my best friend who I went to junior high school with, I called her on the phone. I said, Amanda, it's not going to get any better than this. Whatever I complain to you about, and I've booking agents, or how hard it is, or I'm lonely on the road and I've got a cold and I'm watching Bob Newhart reruns in Japanese. Hell, I'm complaining to you about, please remind me of this. Okay. Don't let me lose sight of it. Cause like most artists, you can get 500 great reviews and then you'll remember one that's just a little lukewarm.
Yeah.
And that'll be the one that it's like you lose sleep over, you're freaked out. So I made, she has reminded me whenever I've been burnt out, she'll say, me, remember that gig, remember all these gigs now. So those are two of the most special, Craig. And it just reminds me of just how lucky I am to live my life as an artist and to get to do what I do. Yeah, it's been a lot of dues paying, but man, now, how cool is that? I just show up and get to share my music with people. I mean, it's
wonderful.
That's a pretty lucky thing. So
I interviewed a player in Nashville just about a month ago, and he had an expression, goes, "It beats working down at the screw factory."
Man, it sure do. It sure do.
Do you still take, like, when you get the negative person or some troll online, do you still take that personal? Or are you able to okay, cool.
I don't even have time to check things out. I get so much positive stuff that if there's one thumb down, but there's 20,000 thumbs up, I don't need to read the thumbs down. Yeah. Anybody that needs to reach me about some fun, every now and then there'll be some, ridiculous thing. I don't have the time for it. I'm on to the next thing. I'm moving on. And again, in this case, it's not just the bottle half full. I've got so much good stuff. And so any negative stuff, it's almost like, it's like a little fleck of dirt or something. I just flick it off. I don't even have any energy for it. So
it always boggles my mind how people do have energy, like not the recipient, but how who has time for that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, you just, I'm who has time and who has the energy, because that's a lot of emotional.
Putting a lot of shit.
You have to expend. Yeah. No.
I don't get that.
Yeah.
Is there anything that, let's say, like if you had to look back and maybe give yourself some advice, is there anything that the younger Mimi Fox, assuming she would have listened,
which is a big assumption.
Yeah, because you know what? This is what I like. One of the things I like about you, you're very motivated by righteous indignation. And I like that, because I am as well. The best thing you could do is tell me, you're going to fail, because that's like, taking fire and pouring gasoline in it inside my head.
Well, that's like that guy when I was 19 and I was playing in a funk band, and he said, Mimi, and I had just started playing jazz guitar, but I was, just playing funk stuff, but he goes, he said, you play pretty good rhythm, but you shouldn't try to solo. Girls just don't have the balls to do that. Oh my God. That was the best thing he could have possibly done. Right. If I ever run into that guy somewhere, I should thank him. Yeah,
I mean, this is, the things people, assist you with sometimes, when you're not, it doesn't seem like an assist, but maybe it was,
Right.
But is there anything advice you would have given to yourself that you think would have made your life easier, either as a player, performer, human being, anything?
Yes, absolutely. Well, it's actually a lot of the same advice that I give to younger, students now, which is to not personalize things when someone is a jerk. Because remember, I told you that it dawned on me that that's what I should do, but I didn't know that for a while. So I would get all up in arms and I'd get pissed off. And then what would happen is I'd sort of, my world started to get more sort of narrow because I would stop going to some of this jam sessions because I didn't want to run into this guy that was going to hit on me or be gross or say mean things. And so my world got smaller, and that's not good because as a musician, you want your world to be big. You want to be part of a scene, not hold yourself out. And I think, unfortunately, at that time, then because I seemed somewhat removed, like I had a reputation for leaving skid marks after the gig. They didn't know that the reason I wasn't hanging out and playing pool, it's not because I didn't like most of the guys, but because this one guy was just going to be such a jerk, and so I would leave skid marks. So people got the impression that I had a chip on my shoulder, which was totally not true. But so I think I would say to my younger Mimi, don't let the schmucks get you down, and hold your head up high, and find the people that will mentor you, and just ignore it. Just ignore it and don't personalize it. I would have, if I could have grabbed myself sooner and done that, I would have said that. And I also think that there was a time that I overcompensated for being a woman, where I really felt like I had to play twice as fast and do twice as much and do all these things because I didn't want people saying, oh, you play pretty good for a girl. And I just didn't want that. And so I pushed myself so hard, Craig. I mean, I would get up at 8 every morning. I practiced for 6 hours. I would take a shower, make my oatmeal, practice for 6 hours, then go out and teach, then go out and do 3 gigs, I mean, when you're in your 20s, you can do that for a while, but I pushed myself so ruthlessly. I would say to the younger Mimi, you know what, girlfriend, you can lighten up just a little bit and take time to smell the proverbial roses, because I just felt like I was like a drill sergeant with myself, Craig. I mean, it's like, and that is my personality. I'm highly self-disciplined. I mean, I was a long distance runner. I was the person at the gym doing 250 crunches and then writing a little note if I didn't finish all 250. Oh, I owe myself 30 crunches, and I do it the following day. I mean, I'm obsessive, maniacal type AAA. I would have said I've had to learn as I've gotten older, you know what? I don't have to push that hard. And my music retains its beauty without having to try to be, because the minute you step on stage and you're trying to prove something, or you have an axe to grind, pun intended.
Sure.
That is not a good thing, because then the music suffers, because you can't be a clear channel and your heart can't emerge, and all the beauty that you have inside of you cannot emerge if you're busy saying, oh, what does this person think of my playing? What does this guy think of my playing? Oh, what does he think? What does he think? Oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That I would have said to my younger self, you are good enough and you don't need to kill yourself, because I pushed myself too hard. That's what I would say.
I've struggled with this. So I'm wondering, I've always been performance, or I've always measured my own almost worth by performance. Like, how much shit did I get done? How much did I tick off my checklist? And I'm listening to you and I'm like, yeah, that sounds really weird, but that sounds like kind of like I'm not anymore. I've learned to cut myself slack and just not give a shit as much, to be honest with you. Not to produce less quality, but to allow myself to, like you said, smell the roses. But I was very performance oriented. How did I feel good about myself on a day? Well, I got 10 items on my checklist banged out instead of 4.
Yeah.
Were you kind of like that?
Oh, absolutely. And I still am like that. It's something that I mean, it's my nature, Craig, and probably for you too. It sounds like there are just people like us that are very driven, very self-disciplined, very motivated. But I am a results-oriented person.
Right.
I want to see these results. I want to see that. The danger in that is that you lose sight of the
bar always keeps getting higher. Yeah. So you're never going to hit it, man, because
that's why I told you that I said to my friend after I got that great, not only the experience at the Kennedy Center performing there, but then having the great write-up afterwards. And I said to my friend, I know I'm going to call you. I hope it's not a month from now, but it's going to be a year from now because it's my best friend. I'm godchild to her kid. I say, Amanda, please tell me. I'm going to call you, and I'm going to be in a bad mood. I'm going to be tired. I'm going to be burnt out. I'm going to say I played like shit last night. I'm going to be down on myself, and just remind me of that. So, the only thing that I can say is that for me, 7 years ago, after having been a complete health nut, my entire life, I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't smoke. I was a fanatic, I was an amateur athlete, running my distance races and all of that, and fanatical about my health. I got breast cancer 7 years ago. Wow. And that really changed me because I was indignant. And I remember saying to the poor woman that called me from the clinic to give me the results of this mammogram, she was like, oh, I must have driven her crazy because she was practically crying. I was like, I don't have breast cancer. How do I know that the radiologist read the right cells? I don't think you guys have this. This is not possible, right? I thought I was immune. And after that happened, and through my process, it was really kind of an awakening because I realized not only my own mortality, but I realized my own fragility, my own humanness in a way that I had never before, Craig. Because I just thought, I was the woman that could run marathons. I was the woman that taught myself how to play guitar. I could do all this shit. And nothing was ever going to happen to me. And so it was sort of like, wow. I mean, the arrogance that I had that I didn't even realize, which really was a thinly veiled way of compensating for lack of self-confidence. But the arrogance that I held and the sort of indignation, that was just blown out of the water. And then I realized, okay, I am, successfully cancer-free. It's been 7 years. I'm doing great. But I realized that shit happens in life. And do I really want to spend the rest of my life being a drill sergeant in my own mind? Yeah, well, you got this thing out, but now what about, I'm finishing one album and I've got my next 5 albums planned out. And I'm on a beach in Hawaii on vacation with my spouse, and I'm planning my next 5 albums. I'm sitting there with my hands tapping out rhythms as I'm laying on the beach. Not good.
No.
Not good. I'm not talking about the creative process, which can happen at any point.
No. You're talking about
sort of maniacal, driven, focus of I must have this, I must have this, I must produce this, I must do this, I must have these results, I must do that. I've learned to temper that. I would say that it's part of my personality, Craig, and some of it I just don't know that I change. And look, it's a double-edged sword. It's obviously I've used that to spur me on to be the best musician I possibly can be, but it's a bit of a hindrance when it's taken to an extreme, like anything. Does that make sense? Does that all make sense?
It makes perfect sense. I'm just taking it all in and processing it because that's a lot of stuff, and I'm really happy that you're cancer-free, and it's interesting. Like, I don't want to spend time talking about me, but just to say the thing that got me out of that zone and allowed me to be more present there's actually 2 things. I had some family stuff go on that was fairly serious, and I don't like being a victim. And I thought, when this whole thing happened, I thought to myself, I've got to get something out of this. And the thing I got out of it for me was I got to start enjoying my life.
Right.
And it was like between.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Craig.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say part of it for me too was that I had not been to a doctor in like 40 years. I mean, I was a health nut. I took care of myself. I popped my vitamins. I didn't drink coffee. I didn't do sugar. I was a vegan for 35 years. I mean, you're talking about someone that was like, so that's why I was so indignant. It's like, how could this happen to me? And blah, blah, blah. But I had to learn to trust people. And because I didn't trust the medical establishment one bit. I was just like, they don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're just throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks. And then as it turns out, no, my surgeons, I ended up finally, actually, there's a stereotype that surgeons are supposed to be kind of cold and cool. Yeah. But my surgeon was a total sweetheart. And she, I couldn't trust everybody else. I didn't trust the radiologist or the oncologist. But she basically said to me, Mimi, I think you can trust me. I've been researching breast cancer for 35 years. Here's what we know. Can you trust me, Mimi? Can you just start here? And that was a big thing for me. And that helped me in this process because part of this constantly doing and achieving and stuff is that I'm the only one that can do it. I have to do it. Everything's on me. And it's that lack of trust of other people that I had to learn. And so in the process of trusting my surgeon, I learned to trust the radiologist and now my oncologist. I mean, it doesn't stop me from peppering them with a million questions, but I still have, I have a trust. That's part of what happened for me, Craig, and I don't know if that happened for you, but it's like, you have to, at the same point that you start sort of saying, I can't push myself that hard, you have to also turn some things over and let other people help you.
Yeah, for sure.
Other people want to be there for you. It's only my tunnel vision that I couldn't see it. I didn't see that. In fact, I had a good friend back in New York who's a great saxophonist, and she had been through several bouts of cancer. And she said to me, Meme, the most important thing she said to me is, people want to be there for you. Let them. Because I didn't know how to let people be there for me, Craig. I was Superwoman.
And you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Why was that? Because it sounded like you had a pretty good upbringing. Like I always had issues. Like if I think to myself, sometimes the answer, like if I had to go back, give myself advice, there's two things. One of the things I say is take help from others. The reason I didn't take help from others is I had a really difficult childhood. Like I didn't know the word help existed. It just wasn't, I didn't know.
I did too.
Yeah. I understand exactly what you mean. I did. And that's one of the things that happened to me. I sort of surrendered and I said, man, I got to start taking help from people.
Right.
Because when I had this series of crises, and the other thing that helped me is, believe it or not, I've only been playing guitar 3 years. Starting to play guitar helped me because I've always been musical. I played saxophone at Carnegie Hall when I was a kid. I was in the Bronx Borough Band, but I've always wanted to play guitar, never picked it up. And I started playing 3 years ago, and it forced me to be in the moment. And I realized I can't enjoy this thing. Like I can't think about what I'm going to play in 10 minutes. I can't think about what happened last Thursday or, some stupid thing in my head that I got to plan for, a contingency that is never going to happen anyway. And somehow it all allowed me to just like allow the rest of my life to be like that. It was I guess I was ready. I don't know, but, and it was as simple as flipping a switch on your guitar from one pickup to the next. I just said, I'm done.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
Well, I think that there is a maturation process that happens when you look at your life and you look at how many years you've lived and how many years you are likely to have.
Right. If you're smart anyway.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's sort of what is the expression? You choose your battles. As you get older, you just start things are tempered. There's, the sharp edges soften, and you start. I'm still a really intense person, but like I have students that remind me of, that I'm still seeing a few conservatory students for one-off lessons here and there. And this one guy, beautiful young man, he'll say, well, Mimi, what about this? What about this? And he wants everything just the way I was. He wants it all today. And I'll say to him, man, you got to wait and let life emerge. It will come. I want to say to him, like in The Wizard of Oz, all in due time, my little pretty, all in due time. But that's what it's about, Craig. That's, so I think as we get older, we choose our battles and we learn to make things a little easier for ourselves.
Wow. Thank you very much. People come on the show and they say it was like therapy. That was just like therapy for me. So
it can.
I got to send you got to send me the bill. Okay. I want to ask you just a question about your tone. And not to put you on the spot, your tone is like literally perfect. And I've listened to a bunch of your stuff and like I said to you before we started the interview, every time I hear you play, I just want to go out and get a jazz box, but I know that's not going to work because it's not going to, when I put it in my hands, it's transference of imagination doesn't work. When did you start focusing on your tone and like, what were some of the steps you took to develop your tone?
It's not something that I've thought about in a gazillion years, but when I studied classical guitar, I studied in my early 20s, I studied classical guitar for about 2 years back in New York. And a lot of the focus was on getting a beautiful tone. And so whether I'm playing an acoustic guitar or I'm playing my jazz box, it doesn't really matter. I think of the guitar as such a beautiful, magnificent instrument. And so I'm always focused on the sound, not just what I'm playing, the content, the musical ideas or the improvisation, but I'm always aware in the back of my head that it should sound beautiful. It should sound like something. I mean, the guitar is such a beautiful instrument, so it should sound like something. Anyway, so I guess it's just an intuitive thing. I think from having studied classical guitar and just having my hands on the instrument for so many years, Craig, I don't want to make it sound like, it's a mystical thing. I'm sure that I thought about it a lot when I was doing classical guitar, but now at this point, it's just something, it's part of my touch. It's part of my attack on the instrument. It's just a natural, I guess it's just become second nature is what I was looking for.
Okay. It's very resonant. It's just, you're very full. I can't explain.
Oh, thank you. Some of it's the guitar. I happen to have some very nice guitars too. So, yeah.
And I just want to tell the listeners, this interview that you're hearing has probably gone on at least twice as long. So I have to be judicious with questions, but Mimi and I have just spent a lot of time talking. And I'll have her on again and we'll talk more guitar stuff. Last question. Any hobbies or interests outside of music?
Yeah, I am a complete freakazoid for science fiction, both books and movies and TV shows. It can be Star Trek Next Generation. I go in binge watching cycles, such that I feel like Captain Picard is my next door neighbor. Perhaps he's going to show up and say, make it so, Mimi, make it so. But I will watch anything from the most ridiculous, stupid old sci-fi movies to current stuff. So I love sci-fi. I love baseball. It was one of the things I used to do with my dad. Would take me to Yankee Stadium. And I had my first peanut. I didn't like them when I was a little girl. Little did I know I'd become a vegan and peanuts would be such a big part of my diet. But my dad and I would go, and it was always a special time. And it was a good time to be a Yankee fan because it was, in the early 60s. Oh, yeah. When I was just a little girl, it was Mickey Mantle and Roger Maris and, Whitey Ford. And it was just a great team. But in any event, I do love baseball, and I've been in the Bay Area a long time, so I've converted. I am a Giants. I noticed, yeah. Yeah, my sister has never forgiven me, but she likes San Francisco, and she comes to visit, so she's accepted that I'm a traitor. And I said to her, look, at least it's not L.A. At least I'm not a Dodgers fan.
That's right. Could be worse.
Those are some of the outside things, and I, as I mentioned to you, I'm still very athletic, so I I hike, I bike, I swim. I love to be outdoors doing things. And I have one other hobby. I love crossword puzzles.
Really?
Yeah,
Very
I'm kind
cool.
of addicted. I'm addicted to those and to acrostics. So
That's funny. I haven't heard that in a long time.
yeah.
So listen, I want to talk to people and talk to about your new record that comes out today, the day this interview drops. It's called This Bird Still Flies. It's on Origin Records. What do you like most about this record?
I have never done an album all acoustic. On many of my albums, I've got one or two pieces that I'm playing my acoustic guitar on, but this is all acoustic, and it's just, there's something about playing an acoustic guitar. It just feels like it's taken me. It's like coming home in some ways. I mean, I love my jazz box, and I have a voice on that. That's one voice, but my acoustic guitar has always been very special to me, and it's another voice. So I hope people will appreciate this because it is a different side of my playing. I'm still playing jazz. I'm still improvising, but I cover quite a lot of ground on this. And we can talk about that more next time. But, I'm playing my Taylor Builder's Edition guitar, and I also have a baritone that I'm using. And
Baritone acoustic.
Yeah, baritone acoustic.
Wow, that's interesting.
Also a Taylor, yeah. And in fact, I do a very funky, really fun version of Day Tripper, which I reharmonize and because it's a wacky jazz thing on the baritone. And it's just that lick, it just sounds so funky on the baritone. It's really fun.
That's awesome. And everybody can get This Bird Still Flies on your website?
On my website, and also at Origin Records, or come out to a show and get a physical CD, one of those little things that you can use as a Frisbee.
And it's just MimiFox.com? Was it Mimi Fox Music?
Mimi Fox Guitar.
Mimi Fox Guitar. MimiFoxGuitar.com. And I think Mimi's going to be coming back on the show to talk about more specifically about This Bird Still Flies. And also she has...
Yeah, you can't lose me, Craig.
She's got 6 courses on True Fire. She's one of their oldest. That was horrible.
Yeah,
she's one of their oldest teachers, meaning she's been with them a long time, since the early 2000s. So check her out on there. And are you on social media that you want to promote?
Yeah, Facebook. Check me. You like me? Come to my Facebook page and
Instagram.
Yep.
Facebook and Instagram. Awesome. So check out Mimi Fox on Facebook and Instagram. Listen, I could literally talk to you like all night. So thank you.
I know, right?
Thank you very much for everything. I really appreciate it. You're a very sweet person. I'm very, thank you very much for sharing everything with me. You got a great story. You're an amazing player. And I hope everybody listening will go check out This Bird Still Flies and check out all the other stuff that Mimi's put out. She's just a phenomenal, beautiful player. And please listen to her. Any final words of wisdom?
No, Craig, just thank you. The feelings are totally mutual. I've so enjoyed talking with you, and it feels like we could go on. Now I need to have lunch. It's 3 hours later where you are, but I got to have some lunch. Girlfriend can't live on air, and but I've really appreciated your questions. Have been really insightful. You promised me this, and you have not disappointed. So thank you, Craig.
Thank you so much. Everybody, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this interview, please share it with a friend on your social media channels. We appreciate your support. Thanks again to Mimi Fox for spending time with us. Please check out This Bird Still Flies and all the other great music she's put out. Make sure you go to everyonelovesguitar.com. Sign up to get on our newsletter list so you and I can connect. And most important, remember that happiness is a choice, so choose wisely. Be nice, go play your guitar, and have fun. Till next time, peace and love, everybody. I'm out. We hope you enjoyed this show. If you did, subscribe to the Everyone Loves Guitar podcast, and you can do this online at everyonelovesguitar.com or on iTunes. And if you like the show, please leave us a 5-star positive review. The more 5-star reviews we get, the higher our show ranks, and higher rankings mean we get to continue speaking with cool, interesting guests on our show. We'll see you on the next episode, and until then, keep playing your guitar and have fun making music.